All those tenets of evolution are true. Okay, so for the sake of this video, we're going to assume the Big Bang and all of that. And so what happens is scientists have proven the existence of a beginning to the universe. Okay, this is called the Big Bang. It's a great expansion of stuff, and so they've charted it down. Guys like Hugh Ross, who's a Christian, he has actually tailored it down to like billions of seconds, and there's a lot of study that's been done in this. Okay, so because there is a beginning, there is actually an entire argument called the Kalam cosmological argument. So if something began to exist, something caused it to begin to exist. The universe began to exist, therefore the universe has a cause. All right? And this can be expanded and proven a lot more drastically, but the basics of the Kalam cosmological argument hinge on the fact that there is a beginning. That beginning always happens in everywhere else that we look. It always has a cause to it. So everything that begins to exist has a cause. And you can't really think of anything that begins to exist outside of just numbers. Everything that begins to exist has something that caused it. Okay? So everywhere we look in nature, other than numbers, everything that we can observe that began to exist has a beginner. Now, overwhelming scientific consensus is the universe began at a point called the Big Bang. Now, as we deal with the definition of God, we understand that because God brought a few things into existence. So, for instance, he brought time and space into being. Therefore, he must be timeless and spaceless. He brought all matter into being, so he must be immaterial because he can't be made of the same stuff that he created. He must also be uncaused because he caused everything else to begin. Now, this is where atheists get illogical, because what they do is they will spend a lot of time saying, well, who made God? I want you to imagine you're walking through the woods and you find this marker. If I'm walking through the woods, I find this marker lying on the ground. It is not illogical for me to assume, given how the world works, that this marker had a creator, had a start. I do not need to know who that designer is. I simply can say, I believe this guy exists. It's not a stretch. I also don't need to know who that guy's parents are. I don't need to know who caused that person. All I need to know is someone brought this into existence. So you could make the case that maybe there's someone who caused God to come into being, who would be more powerful, more creative, more interesting than God. And so there's a God of gods. And then you could go back and say there's a God of gods and a God of gods and all the way back. It has to stop somewhere. But we do not need to know the identity of the one who designed everything. All we have to do is say, by every metric I have at my disposal, I know things come into being. I know they come into being because of a creative designer. Now, if this pen is there, I know that it wasn't a pen who brought this into being. So if I'm looking at stuff made of matter and elements and time and space, I can assume that whoever brought that into being is none of those things. Okay? So that's why when we talk about God, he is timeless, spaceless, immaterial. He is also of unfathomable power. And he has some personal traits to him because he brought us into being. All right, so that's another kind of we're just pulling out blocks and we're putting them on the wall, pulling out blocks, putting them on the wall, and saying these are some of the reasons why we believe there is such a thing as God. And again, we're not trying to prove which God, we're just trying to prove existence of a God, and then we'll go on from there. All right, this has been the Janus Project, and again, we're just tackling this topic of atheism.